I'm Yaakov Katz, and welcome to the Jewish People's Podcast by JPPI. Wars today are fought on multiple fronts. There's, of course, the battlefield in places like the Gaza Strip or Lebanon. There's the home front where the rockets land that are fired from the Houthis in Yemen or Iran or Syria or Lebanon, and of course Gaza into Israeli cities. There's the public diplomacy front in the media and international forums like the United Nations. There is the lawfare front. This is where the battle is waged in courts and in international tribunals around the world. Places like the ICC, the ICJ, or even other courts where you can bring charges against terrorists or against the entities and the banks and the organizations that help fund and facilitate these terrorist organizations' activities. One of the people who stands at the forefront of the battle against the financial support of terrorist organizations is Israeli activist attorney Nitsana Darshan-Leitner. Nitsana has been at the forefront of defending Israel's interests on the global stage for years and is a leader of Shurat HaDin, the Israel Law Center, a Tel Aviv-based Israel civil rights organization. She spearheaded the efforts to counteract campaigns that seek to delegitimize Israel and disrupt and undermine the country's security. This involves using legal avenues to challenge hostile activities targeting Israel, offensive litigation, and direct confrontation of those who advocate for Israel's destruction. Nitsana and Shurat HaDin have led numerous campaigns against entities and individuals. They seek accountability from governments and financial institutions, as well as organizations that support hostile actions against Israel. Today, we're joined by Nitsana to talk about what can be done more on this front, how Israel can battle the warrants that have been issued against Prime Minister Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Gallant by the ICC. We talk about the threat against Israeli soldiers who are now facing potential arrest warrants in places like Brazil or Thailand or other places they may travel in the world. And of course, we also talk about the hostage deal. Nitsana explained to us why she feels that the deal is a bad deal and where that comes from and what does it mean about the results of this war that have been going on now for more than 15 months. You'll want to have a listen. Nitsana, it's great to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us. And I want to start with obviously the hostage deal, the big news of the week. On Sunday, 3 of the female hostages, Doron, Emily, and Romy, were released and came home. We are hoping for another batch of hostages that will be released, it looks like, on Sunday, part of the overall 33, at least in this initial stage 1 of what might turn into a 3-stage hostage deal and ceasefire. I'm curious where you stand on the deal, because I did see that before it actually was implemented, you did have some criticism of the price that Israel was paying for it. So where are you kind of on the deal right now after it's already, the train has left the station to some extent?
We're looking up to the future and hoping that this deal will be successful and all the hostages will be back home, at least at the first stage, and perhaps, I don't believe so, in the second stage. However, my opinion on the deal, on the price, the heavy price that we had to pay for it, did not change. And I blame for this price the one that led the war. You can name the government, you can name the army, the people who promised us that after a year or a year and a quarter, we'll finally dismantle Hamas. If we were fighting diligently in Gaza and do anything we can in order to dismantle Hamas, we would not have to pay that price for releasing the hostages. And taking a back sight on it, I realized that actually we didn't have a choice, because at the pace that this war was going, we really reached a dead end. After the ceasefire in Lebanon, we expected now it's an opportunity to go and smash Gaza, move all the forces from Lebanon into Gaza and finish it once and for all. Instead, we saw what we call ins and outs. The army did not go and conquer Gaza. It just went in some battles after finishing fighting with the terrorists, got out, and thus it let Hamas keep controlling the Gaza Strip, and soldiers were getting killed on a daily basis. 3 soldiers a day, 4 soldiers. It wasn't worth it. It just wasn't worth it. So under these circumstances, I guess we didn't have a choice but to do the hostage deal.
So basically, if I understand what you're saying, and by the way, I kind of feel the same to an extent, is that the fact that we had to agree to such a bad deal, and by the way, I'm in favor of the deal, but the deal is a bad deal because it's multi-layered, it's so many stages, so much can go wrong in between. We're getting 3, then another 3, then 4, and whatever the numbers are, and it's over such a long period of time. And then to get to the second stage, you have to have new negotiations. And I think you are right to an extent, is that this is a result of the way we fought the war. So where did we go wrong then in fighting the war?
One will tell you we did anything possible in the limitations imposed on us. In the end, Israel could not utilize all the force they could. First is the hostages that are, hiding in the tunnels. So Israel had to be very careful. Next comes Biden administration with the embargo, with the bombs that they does not provide to us, with a warning of not violating international law or not harming the civilians in Gaza. Third comes the tremendous amount of humanitarian aid of trucks and food that we all know went to support Hamas, and this is how they kept controlling the Gaza Strip with this enormous amount of food. So all this brought us to the situation. But I believe that if we had a better leadership in the military and maybe a better leadership in the government, things could have looked different. We have hero soldiers. We have young guys and girls that risked their life, sacrificed their life, went and into Gaza, look at the eyeballs of the enemies, wanted to kill them all and to bring back the hostages and to dismantle this organization. We could have done miracles with this army if we just would have led them to take over Gaza and really destroy Hamas. The strategy here, I think, was wrong. I don't know if it's the army's strategy, which came to the government and said, I don't want to take over Gaza because I don't want to do anything that seems like a military governor in Gaza. Or it was the government that hid behind the army and said, it's not that I want to do it. I want to take over Gaza, but the military.
Yeah, wouldn't be the first time of the government hiding behind the army. But Nitsana, the counter argument to that, and this is something that you deal with all the time, is that people out there in the world will say, Nitsana, what are you talking about? You guys have destroyed Gaza. You've devastated Gaza. You've committed genocide in Gaza. I mean, what are you talking about? Taking the gloves off even more? Look at what you did as a country and as a military. So what would your response be to that?
As long as Hamas is still on his feet, we did not destroy Gaza. We did not finish the job. The Hamas was hurt tremendously, not saying not. But for any terrorists we killed, tens of them got up. It's very easy to become a Hamas terrorist. All you need to do is to put a green ribbon on your forehead, take a rifle, take a hand grenade, or take a bomb and stick it to a D9 or to a tank, and that's it. It's easy. So obviously, fighting the Hamas as a military group was successful only to a certain extent. To destroy Hamas as a terror organization, as the one that controls the Gaza Strip, we needed one step further. We needed us to control Gaza, us or any other foreign entity that Israel would have come with, or anybody else but Hamas. Because by controlling the humanitarian aid, controlling the food, you control the population. And this is what Hamas did. And this is why they are still in Gaza. If you go, I mean, you've seen the pictures, the photos of the hostage release deal, gunmen in the middle of the streets,
Yeah.
freely, openly, masses of them. So what did we destroy exactly? Remind me. What did we dismantle in Gaza? Not the Hamas, not at all.
No, those images definitely on Sunday when you're seeing the 3 hostages released and surrounded by dozens, if not hundreds, of these masked armed men makes you wonder, what have we been doing over the last 15 months? And I'm not sure how much of that, how much of that situation, that scene was staged, how much wasn't. But again, it does do something to this feeling that there still is a lot of work that's left. I want to shift gears for a moment and talk about, at Shurat HaDin, I would say maybe the core of what you're doing has to do with, what can be defined to some extent as lawfare, or these lawfare attempts against Israel, but also representing terrorist victims and helping them seek justice and using this almost as a tool to combat some of the terrorist activities that are out there. So I kind of want to break this down into 2 different layers before I talk about what can be done on behalf of terrorist victims, what can be done on behalf of the victims of October 7th, and there's plenty to talk about in that realm. But I am curious, one of the issues that comes up when we think about the pre-October 7th reality here in Israel was, the misconception that we kind of lived in, or the fairy tale, as I call it, that we believed in at the time, was that we can deter Hamas. We can pay money to Hamas. Now, you come from this world, you have spearheaded for many years, this idea of financial warfare is critical for weakening terrorist organizations. In Israel, on the one hand, was saying we need to go after terrorists and stop their money. And with the other hand, we were giving them billions of dollars. Do you imagine a scenario today that we go back to such a reality? How do we ensure that this doesn't happen?
Right. So indeed, you're absolutely right. And when Israel provided Hamas with cash in suitcases with the Qatari government officials, we were the ones, Shurat HaDin was the one to go to the High Court and file a petition to stop this insanity. When Qatar was funding, not through cash in suitcases, but with hundreds of millions of dollars through its Qatari charity foundation. When they funded Hamas in Gaza, we were the one to go and file lawsuits against the Qatari foundation and against the Qatari National Bank to stop these wires. We saw what was going on and we tried to stop it. After October 7th, I had meetings with the National Security Agency, and they told me, yes, we were wrong. We were wrong. Israel was wrong. It was a mistake to fund Hamas on one hand, and on the other hand, to try to fight it. And it's time to cut off all funding for Hamas and also to defame Qatar. Because in the end, Qatar, who funds Hamas, who hosts the leaders of Hamas in its capital, is the main responsible for October 7th. And so I went and along with my colleagues went and filed lawsuits against the Hamas organization. Don't undermine a lawsuit against Hamas organization. You can win a lawsuit and you can go after its funding everywhere in the world. And we did it before. I filed a lawsuit against the Palestinian Authority that gives $1 billion a year to Hamas and still does. File more lawsuits against the Qatari Charity Foundation, but also go after the cryptocurrency companies that are providing a platform for a crowdsourcing campaign that Hamas launched after October 7th, calling the world to donate money through cryptocurrency companies because they cannot cash dollars anymore. And I went after UNRWA that helps the Hamas organization that participated in the massacre, that in every facility of it, every hospital, kindergarten, or school, you will find launchers and missiles and tunnels.
Right.
So that's the goal. And I think that if Israel did not change their concept that you cannot believe that a terror organization wants to live peacefully next to you, that all they want is just to thrive and to have nice life and prosperity, the leadership has to go home. So
Yeah.
I believe that they changed.
I think one of the big lessons, obviously, of October 7th is that when people tell us they want to kill us and they're building up weaponry to be able to kill us, we should probably listen to what they're telling us.
Absolutely. There is no deterrence in a terror organization. No terror organization is deterred. You see them. You see that they're coming carrying out terror attacks knowing that they will be killed. They don't care about their life. They don't care about their houses. Israel does house demolitions from here until the next town. It doesn't matter. They don't care. Their goal is to destroy the state of Israel and to kill as many Jews as possible.
So I do want to ask you about maybe what should the grander strategy be now going forward if the ceasefire actually does hold and we do go to a second stage? Like, what should the strategy be for financial warfare? But just before that, because you did bring up the Qataris, I mean, what you're saying is very interesting, and I tend to agree with you. There is this double-faced Qatari game or two-faced game that they play. On the one hand, they host and provide sanctuary to Hamas leaders. They give them billions of dollars. They fund Al Jazeera, which incites to violence, not to mention support for Muslim Brotherhood throughout the region.
Right.
And on the other hand, they make themselves indispensable because they're the only ones that can actually mediate. But we saw yesterday, so we have these two realities, but just yesterday, Isaac Herzog, Israel's president, at Davos, the World Economic Forum, meets with the Qatari prime minister.
Right. Right.
I mean,
and thanking him for his negotiation. Yes.
So what are we supposed to do here?
I think, listen, when Trump said, if the hostages will not be released by January 20th, hell will pay, he meant not against Hamas, but in the entire Middle East. I think Trump understands that there are sponsors for Hamas, and Qatar is the main factor. And Trump also understands, and as Israel have claimed all these years, that there is another sponsor for Hamas, which is Iran, that funds all the terror organizations in the Middle East, all the Shiite organizations. So the focus of after, if we go back to Gaza or don't go back to Gaza, if the hostage release deal will continue successfully, I don't know what will be the next stage militarily, but financially, the message has to be very clear to all the nations, all the countries that support Hamas. No more. But it's not Israel's war by itself. It's not it's not a thing that Israel singly can do. Not at all. It needs the United States. It needs Trump to come and help her first to go after Iran. Not only the nuclear facilities and the nuclear program of Iran, but also the money that Iran shifts openly, knowingly to the to organizations, put back the sanctions that Biden unfortunately lifted, and put pressure on Iran to stop funding or outsource outside the terror organizations. Next, it has to take care of Qatar. No more. Trump has to be very clear and send a very strong message to Qatar. You cannot be the ATM of all the terror organizations in the world. It doesn't work like this anymore. That's it. And anybody else, any bank that wires money to Hamas, any cryptocurrency companies, we know that Trump is planning to go after Binance, after these companies. Any source of money of Hamas has to be shut down. And you know what? It's not only Hamas, it's every terror organization in the world. ISIS was eliminated this way by going after their oil fields, which they could not provide any more to their soldiers, to the people they controlled, and eventually went bankrupt. If you want to destroy a terror organization, you have to go after its money. It has to be a clear message that Israel will implement and will send all over the world for the westernized nations to join.
I mean, you know this very well. I've heard you speak about this before. I'm not sure that everybody who's listening to us does know this. Explain, please, Nitsana, why is going after the money so important?
Look, money is oxygen for everything, including terrorism. And when you look at a terrorist, don't look just at the hand grenade that he holds, which doesn't cost a lot, or the rifle, or the explosives vest that he has around his shoulders or his vest. He has a whole army behind him. And this army is getting paid. And their facilities are getting built. And you need hundreds of millions of dollars in order to hold such an army. Hamas budget in Gaza stands on $1 billion. They have to provide for the population that they control, but mainly to build their underground tunnels, to bring missiles and launchers into Israel, to manufacture, to create labs that will create hand grenades and RPGs and rifles. That costs money. Now imagine Hamas did not have money. If they didn't have money, they could have launched October 7th. That's a fortune that goes into the Gaza Strip under the blind eyes of the Israeli government, under the blind eyes of United States. Everybody knows. Until this day, the Palestinian Authority gives money to Hamas. Everybody knows that. So for the first time, the Minister of Finance in Israel, Bezalel Smotrich, decided to deduct the amount of money that the Palestinian Authority is giving to Gaza from the tax money. But they've been doing it for all these years. Right. So if you cut off the funding, no terror organization can survive. That's the reason why you have to eliminate the infrastructure, the financial infrastructure of a terror organization, not to let it thrive again. Because the IDF, even if they killed the last terrorist in Gaza, even if destroyed all its military infrastructure, there is Hamas in Judea and Samaria. There is Hamas abroad. They will find a way to crawl back into the Gaza Strip and revive Hamas, build it up again. But if they have no money that they can provide to the population to get their loyalty, money that they can dig tunnels with, money that they can get armed again, they will not be able to survive.
So let's shift gears just for a moment and talk about the situation on the legal front. We have Israel law or arrest warrants that have been issued by the ICC against Prime Minister Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. There's the ICJ proceedings that have moved ahead, and of course there are now threats against Israeli soldiers. There's the story of an Israeli soldier who went to Brazil and had to flee the country because there had been a arrest warrant that was issued potentially for him. There's a story I saw recently about some soldier who was in Thailand. I mean, this is a little nuts when we think about this situation. A, how real is this threat to the Israeli soldiers? And B, is there something that can be done here?
Well, this is a real threat. Because we saw it happening. We saw a soldier, as you described, need to flee for his life from Brazil, otherwise he will be arrested. There is a phenomena recently in the entire world of pro-Palestinian organizations that are utilizing international jurisdiction around the world and go to countries that claim that they have the authority to investigate any war crimes happening anywhere in the world. There are some countries like that. And they go to these countries and bring a complaint with a request for an arrest warrant against IDF soldiers. How do they do it? They just follow the IDF soldiers on social media. A lot of soldiers are raving about what they did and putting pictures on social media, videos. This organization collect this information, this evidence, prepare a very long and based and thorough file, and file a complaint. They know that the soldier is going to Brazil or any other country because the soldier talks about it on Instagram and social media. It doesn't matter if the soldier was involved with explosive of a house in Gaza. It doesn't matter if he really committed war crimes. It doesn't matter if he even was in Gaza. You know what? It doesn't even matter if he was a combat soldier. If the soldier will be arrested, that will be the victory. That will scare everybody in the world that IDF soldiers are really getting arrested, and there will be a huge victory for our enemies. So what the soldiers have to do, first of all, to wipe up all their social media pages.
By the way, the IDF, for example, doesn't let journalists anymore take photos of soldiers as a result.
Absolutely. Not to identify them, yes. Yeah. But privately, the soldiers have to delete their pages, delete their photos, not to leave any trace of evidence. I'm not saying that these pro-Palestinian organizations already download the pictures, but it will be harder for them to come and relate it to the specific soldier. Second, if they didn't do it so far, before they leave the country, they must do it. Don't leave anything. Take the number of the Israeli consulate of the country that you're going to. You may need it. And if, God forbid, you get arrested, don't collaborate with the interrogators. Don't collaborate with the police. Keep silent. In the end, it will be solved between our foreign ministry to their foreign ministry. It will be resolved in a diplomatic level, not in the judicial level. So you don't have to give them more information that they already have or provide them with more ammunition. Just keep your right to be silent and let Israel deal with it. And Israel, from its part, has to take action, has to go to each and every country that it has relationship with and make sure that this country will not allege international jurisdiction when it comes to IDF soldiers. Let Israel do it. You know, there is the complementary principle in the international law that says that a tribunal will investigate a war crime only if the country that this war crime supposedly happened did not investigate or could not investigate the crime. And Israel, as we all know, investigated its crime and indicted soldiers, even indicted the prime minister when they need to. So and nobody else has to do the work for Israel. If there are war crime committed, Israel will investigate it. So Israel has to go to each country and make sure that will not utilize their international jurisdiction against IDF soldiers. If there is a country that will not assure Israel that this is the case, Israel should issue a travel notice warning IDF soldiers not to step foot in these countries.
Basically what we're saying here, war has the battlefield in Gaza. War obviously has the home front where the missiles land. We have the public diplomacy front. We have the legal front. We have the financial warfare front.
Everywhere.
War is everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yes. So let's turn. So if we're talking about the soldiers, that's one thing. And I appreciate kind of what are the steps that people should take, because that is important and people should listen to that. ICC, though, slightly different, right? I mean, what are we supposed to do there?
ICC, Israel made the calculated consideration and decided to participate partially in the proceeding, meaning that on its face, Israel is not a member in the court, the Palestinian Authority is not a state, and the court lacks jurisdiction. However, the court decided that he does have jurisdiction, took we're familiar with this type of courts that just allege jurisdiction without having it. So Israel cannot fight in this front, but Israel wants to, as I spoke about before, use the complementary principle. So they went to the chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, and told him that they want the opportunity to investigate the alleged war crimes that he claims Israel committed in Gaza, which mainly is starvation, genocide for not providing food and humanitarian aid to the population, and even intentionally killing civilians. Let Israel go, investigate it, and then if you see Israel does not investigate or could not again investigate or didn't do a full investigation, have the freedom to go and dive in. And based on this complementary principle, Israel went and filed an appeal on the arrest warrants that the court issued against Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Gallant. I can't tell you what would be the results of the appeal. We know it's a political court, absolutely. But we also know that there is a new player in this arena, which is President Trump.
And the Senate that is talking about sanctions.
And the Senate, exactly, that utilize American laws to impose sanctions on the ICC, on their judges, on the prosecutors, on their employees, even on the committee that Karim Khan, the chief prosecutor, comments in order to get to a conclusion whether Israel commit war crimes or not. One of the members is Amal Clooney, is George Clooney's wife. And we in Shurat HaDin asked to investigate her for violating the American law. There is a law in the United States called the American Servicemen Protection Act that prohibits anyone in the United States to collaborate with the ICC. And if Amal Clooney really was in the United States when she was a member of this committee, wrote an opinion and encouraged the chief prosecutor to issue these arrest warrants, she should be investigated, interrogated for its role in this decision for collaborating with the ICC. But basically, we have the United States government and the United States Senate to take step against the ICC and convince it perhaps to take a step back. But
you think it can work, though? I mean, can that pressure have an impact on them?
Absolutely. Karim Khan already said that he doesn't like personal sanctions. Who does?
Right.
And also countries, listen, the arrest warrants are scary only to the extent that they will be honored by countries. If everybody gave a free pass to Netanyahu to step in their country, it has no meaning. So countries that will, God forbid, utilize it or threaten to arrest Netanyahu if he steps in their country should also be sanctioned.
But what do you think about countries like, I saw Romania, for example, announced the other day that they would allow Netanyahu to come to the country. They wouldn't arrest him. Right? But in other words, the fear is only from countries that are signatories of the Rome Statute, which established the ICC. So America's not a problem, but the UK, Germany, all these other countries. I mean, if you have a leader of a country who says, listen, oh, sure, Netanyahu, you can come here. I won't arrest you. Would you recommend to Netanyahu to go there? Or is there...
I would.
You can trust that leader.
Ruler. I would trust the leader. Although, there are countries that say that the judicial authority is separate from the government, from the executive authority, and therefore, if the judicial authority decides to arrest Netanyahu, the executive cannot be involved. And it happened before. It happened in Belgium with an arrest warrant against Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. And it also happened in Spain with an arrest warrant against the IDF soldiers that were involved with bombing a building in Gaza, which killed several civilian Palestinians. They came and said, we can get involved. But I trust countries that had come in front and say, don't worry, we're taking care of it, to really take care of it. I just don't want them to come and say, we are not honoring an arrest warrant against Netanyahu because he has sovereign immunity. That's not a reason. Because when the soldiers will step in these countries, which they don't enjoy sovereign immunity, they will be arrested. It's okay for them to get arrested. I want them to come and say the ICC has no jurisdiction whatsoever to issue arrest warrants against Netanyahu, and therefore the arrest warrants are invalid. Or to come and say, we know the facts. We watch what's going on in Gaza. There is no basis for war crimes in Gaza. The opposite. The one who commit war crimes are the one who did this atrocity on October 7th. They should be indicted, not the victim that now is trying to fight for its life. For this reason, don't honor it.
Yeah, definitely sends a very bad and dangerous message to the world in how it needs to fight against terrorism by sending an arrest warrant to a country that's defending itself. Well, you can criticize Israel, but this is definitely not the message that we should be sending to terrorist organizations like Hamas.
Absolutely.
Nitsana, thank you so much for joining us. It was really, as always, a pleasure to talk to you. You've enlightened me and I'm sure our listeners, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on today's podcast. As always, you can find us where podcasts can be found, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, of course, on YouTube, and on the Times of Israel's website. In the meantime, I'm wishing you a